You've been holding something at arm's length, something heavy, something that wants to move through you, but you won't let it. You feel it there, just beneath the surface, pressing against your chest, tightening your throat, and you turn away. You turn away again and again. And there's a reason you turn away, isn't there? You're afraid. Afraid that if you let yourself feel this, really feel it, you'll break open. That the tears won't stop. That the anger will consume you. That the grief will pull you under, and you'll drown in it. You're afraid that once you start, you'll never stop. So you keep it contained. You distract yourself, you stay busy, you scroll, you work, you plan. You think about other things, smaller things, manageable things, anything but this. Because this feels too big, too much, too dangerous. But notice what's happening. Notice how much energy it takes to hold this back. How tightly you have to clench. How carefully you have to move through your day, avoiding certain thoughts, certain memories, certain songs. You're building a dam inside yourself, and it takes everything you have to keep it standing. And still, the feeling is there. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's just waiting, pressing, asking to be felt. You think you're protecting yourself by refusing it. You think you're staying in control. But what you're really doing is carrying it everywhere. It's in your shoulders. It's in your jaw. It's in the heaviness you wake up with. It's in the exhaustion that no amount of sleep can touch. You're not avoiding the feeling, you're just refusing to let it move. And the fear, this fear that you'll never stop, where does it come from? It comes from believing that feelings are permanent. That if you let yourself cry, you'll cry forever. That if you let yourself feel the rage, it will define you. That if you open the door to sadness, you'll never find your way back out. But feelings aren't permanent. Nothing is. Everything that arises, passes. Everything. The tightness in your chest right now, it won't last. The heaviness you feel. It's already changing, even as you sit here. Even the fear itself, this fear of never stopping, it comes and goes. It rises and falls like everything else. You're afraid of a flood, but feelings aren't floods. They're waves. They rise, they peak, they fall. They move through if you let them. It's only when you dam them up that they become unbearable. It's only when you hold them back that they seem endless. The Buddha said, you can search throughout the entire universe for someone who is more deserving of your love and affection than you are yourself. And that person is not to be found anywhere. You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. What if the feeling you're refusing is asking for exactly that? Not to be fixed, not to be understood, not to be solved, just to be felt. Just to be allowed. What if it doesn't need you to be strong enough to handle it forever? What if it just needs you to stop turning away for a moment? You've been treating this feeling like an enemy, like something that will destroy you if you let it in. But it's not separate from you. It's already here. It's part of the weather of being alive, and it's not asking to stay forever. It's asking to move. And maybe it will be intense. Maybe it will shake you. Maybe you will cry harder than you've cried in years. Maybe you will feel the full weight of what you've been carrying. But even that, even the hardest wave, it will pass. It will rise and it will fall, and you will still be here. The refusal is what makes it endless. The holding back is what makes it unbearable. Not the feeling itself. You don't have to force anything. You don't have to make yourself feel what you're not ready to feel. But you can notice the refusal. You can see how tightly you're gripping. You can feel the exhaustion of holding the dam in place. And you can ask yourself, quietly, what would happen if you loosened your grip just a little? Not to drown, not to break, just to see. Because the feeling isn't the problem. The fear of the feeling is the problem. And the fear is just another wave, just another visitor, just another part of the weather. It comes, it goes, and you're still here. You reach for your phone. Not because you need to check something, Not because someone is waiting. You reach for it the way your hand moves to scratch an itch. Automatic, immediate, barely conscious. And underneath that reach, there's something sitting in your chest. Something quiet. Something you don't want to feel. Maybe it's heaviness. Maybe it's restlessness. Maybe it's just this vague sense that something isn't quite right, and you can't name it, and you don't want to try. So you scroll. You're not really looking at anything. The images pass. The words blur. You're not even interested. But your thumb keeps moving, and your eyes keep following, and the thing in your chest stays exactly where it is. Just a little more buried now, a little more ignored. What are you actually escaping? It's not the feeling itself. It's the space around the feeling, the stillness, the moment when there's nothing to do and nowhere to go, and you're just here, with whatever is here. That space feels dangerous, because in that space you might notice how tired you are, how uncertain, how much you're holding that you haven't let yourself acknowledge. You might notice the loneliness that's been humming in the background for weeks, or the anger, or the fear that you're falling behind, that you're not enough, that life is moving and you're standing still. So you fill the space before it can speak. You reach for the phone, and the phone gives you something, anything. That isn't this. A distraction, a little burst of novelty, a story about someone else's life that's easier to think about than your own. But here's what's happening. The feeling in your chest isn't going anywhere. You're not escaping it. You're just refusing to turn toward it. And that refusal, that constant turning away, that's where the suffering deepens. Because now you're not just carrying the feeling, you're carrying the tension of avoiding it. The exhaustion of keeping it at arm's length. The quiet anxiety that it might catch up with you if you stop moving, stop scrolling, stop filling every empty moment with something else. You think the phone is protecting you, but it's not. It's just delaying the meeting, and the longer you delay, the heavier it gets. The feeling doesn't dissolve because you looked away. It waits, it accumulates. It becomes this background hum of unease that you carry everywhere, this sense that something is off, but you can't quite say what. What you're escaping isn't the feeling. It's the vulnerability of being present with yourself, of sitting still and letting whatever is here be here, of not knowing what to do with it, of not being able to fix it or solve it or make it go away. That feels unbearable, so you scroll. But the unbearable thing, the thing you're so carefully avoiding, it's not actually the feeling. It's the illusion that you should be somewhere else, that you should feel differently, that something is wrong with you for feeling this way at all. The Buddha said, you can only lose what you cling to. What are you clinging to when you reach for the phone? The idea that you can outrun this moment. The hope that the next scroll, the next notification, the next little hit of distraction will finally be enough to make the discomfort stop. But it never is. Because the discomfort isn't the problem. The problem is the belief that it shouldn't be there. The resistance, the constant exhausting effort to be anywhere but here. And so you keep reaching. And the phone keeps delivering. And the thing in your chest keeps waiting. Not because it wants something from you, not because it's trying to hurt you, just because it's here. Just because this is what's true right now. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to understand it. You don't even have to like it. But when you reach for the phone instead of turning toward it, you're choosing the tension of avoidance over the simplicity of presence. You're choosing the exhaustion of escape over the quiet of just letting it be. The phone isn't the enemy. The feeling isn't the enemy. What creates the suffering is the space between them, the constant motion away, the refusal to meet what's already here. And maybe just for a moment you can notice that. Notice the reach. Notice what's underneath it. Notice that the thing you're escaping isn't dangerous. It's just uncomfortable. It's just impermanent. It's just here. And you are here too. Not fixing it, not solving it. Just here, with your chest and whatever it's holding, and the quiet that comes when you stop running from yourself. You've been moving, haven't you? One thing after another. The podcast while you fold laundry. The scrolling while you wait for water to boil. The planning, the checking, the little tasks that suddenly feel urgent when they never mattered before. And you know what you're doing. You're filling the space. Every hour, every gap, every moment that threatens to open into quiet, you're there first, filling it before the silence can arrive, before something else can arrive. Because there's something waiting there, isn't there? In that silence. You don't know exactly what it is. Maybe you do know, but you don't want to look at it directly. So you keep the noise going, you keep the motion going, you keep yourself busy enough that you never have to meet it. But here's what's happening. The thing you're avoiding, it doesn't go away when you're busy. It waits, it's patient, it sits there in the silence, and every time you rush past it, every time you fill another hour with distraction, you feel it there. You feel the weight of it, the presence of it, the fact that it's still waiting. And that feeling, that heaviness, that low hum of anxiety beneath everything you do, that's not the thing itself. That's the exhaustion of running. That's the suffering you create by refusing to stop. You think the busyness protects you. You think if you just keep moving, keep producing, keep consuming, keep your mind occupied, then you won't have to face whatever is sitting there in the quiet. But the busyness doesn't protect you. It just makes you tired. It makes you hollow. You're working so hard to avoid one moment of discomfort that you're living in constant discomfort instead. And the thing you're avoiding, maybe it's grief. Maybe it's loneliness. Maybe it's the feeling that you're not enough, or that your life isn't what you thought it would be. Maybe it's just emptiness. Just the quiet fact that when everything stops, there's nothing there to distract you from yourself. Whatever it is not as solid as you think. You built it up in your mind. You've made it into something you have to run from, something you can't bear to face. But you haven't actually looked at it. You've just been running. And the longer you run, the bigger it becomes in your imagination. The more power you give it. The Buddha said, "Nothing can harm you as much as your own thoughts unguarded." And that's what's happening here. The thing in the silence, it's not chasing you, you're chasing yourself. You're creating the fear by avoiding it. You're making the discomfort worse by refusing to let it be. Because here's the truth, the silence isn't empty. It's full. It's full of whatever you've been pushing away. And yes, that might be uncomfortable. It might be sad. It might be disappointing or frightening or just deeply ordinary in a way that feels unbearable. But it's also impermanent. Whatever is waiting there, it's not a permanent thing. It's not a solid wall you'll crash into. It's a feeling, a thought, a story about yourself or your life. And feelings pass, thoughts dissolve, stories change. But you won't know that until you stop filling the hours. You won't know that until you let the silence arrive and see what's actually there, instead of what you've been imagining. And maybe that's the real fear. Not that the thing in the silence is too much to bear, but that it's nothing. That when you finally stop, when you finally let yourself be still, you'll find that there's no solid ground beneath you, no fixed self to return to. Just this moment, and then the next, and then the next. Just the endless flow of experience with no one in control. That's what you're avoiding. Not the pain, not the sadness, the groundlessness, the fact that you can't hold on to anything. The fact that all this motion, all this filling, all this doing, it doesn't make you more real. It doesn't make you more secure. It just keeps you too busy to notice that you were never secure to begin with. So you fill the hours. You keep the playlist going. You keep the calendar full. You keep moving because stopping feels like disappearing. But you're already tired. You're tired of running. You're tired of the noise. You're tired of avoiding the one thing that's been waiting for you all along. Just this, just the quiet, just the moment as it is, without anything added, without anything to prove. And it's still there, waiting. Not because it wants something from you, but because it was never separate from you in the first place. You say you're fine. You've said it so many times now that it comes out smooth, automatic, like breathing. Someone asks how you are, and before you even feel anything, the words are already there. I'm fine, I'm good, everything's fine. And maybe you are fine, or maybe you're protecting something. But what are you protecting? That's the question, isn't it? Are you protecting yourself from being seen as weak, as struggling, as less than you should be? Or are you protecting the story? The story you built about who you are? The story others believe about you? The story that keeps everything in place? There's a difference there, a small one. But it matters. When you say you're fine to protect yourself, you're hiding. You're keeping something tender away from the light because you're afraid of what will happen if it's seen, afraid of judgment, afraid of pity, afraid someone will look at you differently or worse, look away. So you cover it, you smile, you keep moving. And underneath, the thing you're hiding stays there, quiet, waiting. But when you say you're fine to protect the story, something else is happening. You're not just hiding from others, you're hiding from yourself. Because if you admit you're not fine, the story cracks. The story that says you have it together. The story that says you're capable, strong, in control. The story that says you don't fall apart like other people do. And if that story cracks, who are you? That's the real fear, isn't it? Not what they'll think, but what you'll have to face about yourself. You've built this version of you, carefully, over years. You've shown people the parts that fit. You've hidden the parts that don't. And now the story feels like the truth. It feels like who you are. So when something inside you hurts, when something feels too much, you don't just hide it from them. You hide it from yourself. Because to admit it would mean the story isn't real. And if the story isn't real, then what have you been holding on to all this time? You can feel it sometimes, can't you? The gap between what you say and what you feel. The gap between the face you show and the weight you carry. It's small at first, barely noticeable. But it grows. And the more you say you're fine, the wider it gets. Until you're not even sure anymore which one is true, the fine version or the version underneath. And here's the thing, the story you're protecting, it's not stable. It never was. It's made of moments, of other people's perceptions, of things you once believed about yourself that may not even be true anymore. It shifts, it changes, it requires constant maintenance. You have to keep performing it, keep proving it, keep saying you're fine, even when you're not, because the moment you stop, the whole thing starts to fall apart. The third Zen patriarch said, "Do not seek the truth, only cease to cherish opinions." You're cherishing an opinion about yourself, an opinion that you should be fine, that you should have it together, that you shouldn't be struggling with this, whatever this is. And that opinion has become more important than the truth, more important than what's actually happening inside you. So you protect it, you defend it. You say you're fine not because you are, but because you need to be, because the alternative is too uncertain, too open, too real. But the story is already falling apart. It's been falling apart the whole time. Every time you pretend, every time you perform, every time you say the words that don't match what you feel, you know. Somewhere in you, you know. And that knowing is the crack. That's the thing you can't unsee once you've seen it. You don't have to fix this. You don't have to choose right now between protecting yourself and protecting the story. You don't have to confess or collapse or change anything at all. But you can notice. You can notice the gap. You can notice the performance. You can notice how tiring it is to keep saying you're fine when part of you isn't. You can notice how the story requires you to be a certain way and how that requirement never ends. And in the noticing, something shifts. Not the story, not the feeling, just the awareness that you're doing this, that you've been doing this, that the protection you thought was keeping you safe has become the thing you're most afraid to let go of. You don't have to let go. You don't have to do anything, just see it. See how you're holding it, see what you're protecting, see the difference between hiding from them and hiding from yourself. And rest there, in the seeing, not in the answer, not in the fix, just in the quiet awareness that you're pretending, and you know you're pretending, and maybe that's enough for now. You feel something rising in you, and before it even fully arrives, you've already decided. Too much, too big. I can't handle this. And just like that, the feeling becomes the enemy. Not because of what it is, but because of what you've said about it. You're not actually drowning in the feeling, you're drowning in the story that you can't hold it. Notice how quickly that happens. A tightness in your chest, a wave of sadness, a surge of anger, and within seconds your mind has measured it, judged it, and found you lacking. You've turned a passing experience into proof of your weakness. You've made the feeling permanent before it even had a chance to move. And now you're not just feeling, you're fighting, you're bracing, you're trying to push it away while simultaneously believing you're too small to contain it. You've split yourself in two, one part feeling, one part refusing to feel. But who decided the size of this feeling? Who measured it and declared it too big? You did. You're the one who looked at it and said, "This is more than I can hold." You're the one who drew a line and decided this feeling is on the wrong side of it. And now you're suffering twice. Once from the feeling itself, and once from the belief that you're not enough to meet it. The feeling didn't come with a label. It didn't arrive announcing itself as unbearable. You named it that. You are the one who keeps saying, "You can't," and then using that as evidence that you can't. What if the feeling isn't too big? What if you're just afraid of what it means about you, if you feel it fully? Because if you let yourself feel this completely, you might have to admit something. You might have to admit you're heartbroken, or terrified, or alone, or that you've been pretending for a long time. And maybe that admission feels more dangerous than the feeling itself. So you tell yourself the feeling is too big, when really you're just afraid of what's on the other side of it. You keep yourself at the edge, never fully in, never fully out. Resisting just enough to stay uncomfortable, but not enough to actually move through. And in that resistance, the feeling grows. Not because it's big, but because you won't let it be what it is. You hold your breath against it. You tense your body around it. You think about it instead of feeling it. And all of that effort to avoid the feeling becomes harder than the feeling ever was. The Buddha said, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your compassion." But you're not giving yourself that. You're measuring yourself against some imagined capacity you think you should have. Some version of you that could handle this without flinching. And because you can't be that person, you decide you're failing. You're not failing. You're just feeling. And you're making it mean something about who you are. The feeling is impermanent. It rises, it peaks, it passes. But you've frozen it in place by deciding you can't hold it. You've made it solid by pushing against it. You've given it weight by believing the story that you're too fragile for this. And the truth is, you've been holding it this whole time. Right now, in this moment, you are holding it. You're just also telling yourself you can't. Both are happening at once. The feeling is here, and you are here with it, and yet you keep narrating your inability to do what you're already doing. You are holding it. You just don't like how it feels to hold it. That's different. You want it to feel manageable, contained, controlled. You want to hold it without it changing you, without it asking anything of you, without it revealing anything you'd rather not see. But feelings don't work that way. They move through you. They touch everything. And you can't hold them at arm's length and call that holding them. So maybe the question isn't whether you can hold this feeling. Maybe the question is whether you're willing to stop deciding you can't. Because every time you say this is too big, you're choosing that story over the direct experience. You're choosing the fear of the feeling over the feeling itself. And that choice, repeated over and over, becomes your suffering. The feeling will do what it does. It will rise and fall like everything else. But the belief that you can't hold it, that's something you keep creating moment by moment with your own mind. You are the one deciding, and you can notice that. You can see how you do this, not to fix it, not to stop it, just to see it clearly. The feeling is here. You are here. And the space between those two things is something you've invented. You keep checking the calendar in your mind, don't you? As if somewhere, written in a language you can't quite read, there's a date circled. The date when this should be over. The date when you should be better. When the weight should lift. When you should stop waking up with that heaviness in your chest. You tell yourself it's been long enough. You count the weeks, the months. You compare yourself to people who seem to have moved on faster, who seem lighter, who seem to have found the exit you're still searching for. And beneath all of that counting, beneath all of that measuring, there's a quiet panic. Because the pain is still here. And you think that means something is wrong with you. You made a deal you don't remember making. You agreed to terms you never saw. Somewhere along the way you started believing that grief has a shape, a timeline, a proper way to unfold. That if you just wait long enough, do it right enough, feel it correctly enough, there will be a morning when you wake up and it's simply gone. Completed. Finished. Like a course you've passed. But it doesn't work that way, does it? And every time you notice the pain is still there, you feel something else underneath it, a kind of failure, a sense that you're doing this wrong, that you're holding on when you should be letting go, that you're weak or stuck, or somehow choosing this. So you push, you try to hurry it along. You tell yourself to be grateful, to think positive, to focus on what you still have. You distract yourself, you fill your days. You perform okayness for the people around you because you think they're tired of your sadness, tired of waiting for you to return to who you were. And maybe you're tired too, tired of carrying this, tired of yourself. But here's what's happening. You're not just feeling pain, you're feeling pain about the pain. You're suffering because the suffering hasn't ended. You're creating a second layer, a story that says this shouldn't still be here. And that story, that resistance, that's where so much of the weight comes from. The original pain, the grief itself, it moves, it changes. Some days it's sharp, some days it's dull, some days it's barely there, and some days it floods you in the middle of the grocery store for no reason you can name. It doesn't follow the path you thought it would. It doesn't ask your permission. It doesn't care about your schedule. But the story you tell about it, that's different. That story is fixed. That story says there's a right way and a wrong way. That story measures and compares and judges. That story looks at the pain and says, you shouldn't still be here. And so, you're at war with your own experience. You're trying to evict something that hasn't finished visiting. You're rushing toward an ending that can't be rushed. You're treating your heart like a problem to be solved, a project with milestones and completion dates. The Buddha said, you yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your compassion. What if there is no deadline? What if grief doesn't work on your timeline because it was never supposed to? What if the pain is still here not because you're doing something wrong, but because loss is like that? It doesn't pack its bags neatly. It doesn't leave when you ask it to. It stays until it doesn't, and even then it visits sometimes, unexpectedly, years later, in a smell or a song or the angle of afternoon light. You can't schedule your way out of this. You can't discipline yourself into feeling differently. You can't shame yourself into healing faster. Every time you tell yourself there's a deadline, you're adding weight to what's already heavy. You're turning natural human grief into evidence of your inadequacy. And maybe, just maybe, the exhaustion you feel isn't from the grief itself. Maybe it's from fighting it, from resisting it, from trying to make it be something other than what it is, from telling yourself again and again that you should be somewhere you're not. The pain doesn't need your permission to be here. It doesn't need your approval. It's here because something mattered, because something was real, because you're human and humans break when they lose what they love. There's no deadline for that. There's no schedule. There's just this moment and what's true in it. You don't have to fix this. You don't have to speed it up or slow it down. You don't have to make it make sense. You can just let it be what it is, not forever, not as a choice, just right now, just this breath, just this moment of not needing it to be different. The deadline you keep inventing, it's not real. It never was. And maybe there's something almost gentle in seeing that. In realizing you've been racing toward a finish line that doesn't exist, in letting yourself stop running. The pain is here, and you're here. And there's no schedule for how long that's allowed to be true. You've been steering around certain streets, certain cafes, certain songs. You tell yourself it's practical, that there are other routes, other places, but you feel it, don't you? That small tightening when you think about going there. That quick turn away. And now you're asking yourself, why? Is it because those places hurt? Or is it because they show you something you don't want to see, that you're still holding on? Maybe it's both. Maybe the hurt and the attachment are the same thing, just wearing different faces. You avoid the coffee shop because walking past it brings back the feeling of sitting there together. The light through the window, the way they laughed. And for a moment, it's so vivid you can almost reach out and touch it. But you can't. And that's when the ache comes, sharp and immediate. So you cross the street, you take the long way, you protect yourself from the reminder. But what are you protecting yourself from really? Not the place, not the memory itself. You're protecting yourself from the feeling of wanting something that isn't here anymore. From the quiet, uncomfortable truth that part of you is still reaching for what's gone. The hurt isn't in the place. The hurt is in the reaching. You walk by and the memory rises, and with it comes the wanting. The wishing it were different. The wishing they were still here, or that things hadn't changed, or that you could step back into that moment and live inside it again. And because you can't, because the moment is gone and the person is gone and everything has moved on except this part of you, that's where the suffering lives, not in the absence, in the attachment to what was. You avoid the place because it makes you feel the grip of your own hand, still closed around something that's no longer there. And maybe that's harder to face than the sadness itself. The sadness is clean, in a way. It's honest. But the attachment shows you that you're still trying to hold on to smoke, still believing, somewhere deep down, that if you just remember hard enough, want deeply enough, it might come back. It won't, and you know that. But knowing it and feeling it are not the same thing. So you avoid, you reroute, you protect the illusion that if you don't look, maybe the attachment will fade on its own. Maybe if you stay away long enough, the wanting will dissolve. But it doesn't work that way, does it? Because the place isn't the problem. The attachment follows you. It's there when you're alone at night. It's there in other places, other moments. It's there in the careful way you avoid certain words, certain topics, certain thoughts. You carry it with you, everywhere. The Buddha said, you only lose what you cling to. And maybe that's what you feel when you think about those places. Not just the loss itself, but the clinging. The way your mind wraps around the past and holds it close even as it cuts. You're not avoiding the place because it's painful. You're avoiding it because it shows you your own hand, still gripping. And that's uncomfortable, because it means you're not as free as you thought. It means the past still has you. It means you're still attached, still hoping, still wanting something that time has already carried away. But here's the thing. Seeing that, really seeing it, isn't failure. It's not weakness. It's just what's true. You're attached. You're still holding on. And that's creating the suffering, not the memory, not the place, the holding. And you can see that now. You can feel the difference between the sadness of loss and the ache of attachment. One is natural, inevitable. The other is something you're doing moment by moment without realizing it. You're keeping it alive. You're feeding it with your avoidance, with your careful distance, with your refusal to let the place just be a place again. Because if you let it be just a place, you'd have to let go of what it represents. You'd have to stop using it as a container for what's gone. You'd have to allow the past to be past. And maybe you're not ready for that. Maybe the attachment still feels like connection, like loyalty, like love. But it isn't. It's just suffering wearing the mask of devotion. So you stand here asking yourself this question, and maybe there's no answer that makes it easier. Maybe the question itself is enough, because now you see it. The avoidance, the attachment, the quiet, persistent reaching for what isn't here. You see it. And in the seeing, something shifts. Not a solution, not a release, just awareness. You're still attached. And that's okay. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to let go right now. You just have to see it. And maybe that's enough for today. You're holding something. Maybe it's a feeling you've never spoken aloud. Maybe it's a part of yourself you've learned to tuck away before anyone gets too close. Maybe it's a fear, a desire, a memory, a truth that lives just beneath the surface of everything you say and do. And you become very skilled at keeping it there. You know how to change the subject. You know how to smile in a way that closes the door gently. You know how to be present enough that no one suspects you're also absent. You built your life around this hidden thing, and most of the time you don't even notice you're doing it. But sometimes, in the quiet, you feel the weight of it. You feel how much energy it takes to keep something unseen. How carefully you have to move through conversations, through relationships, through your own thoughts. How you have to monitor yourself, edit yourself, protect yourself from being fully known. And underneath that protection, there's a question you don't often let yourself ask: what are you actually protecting? Maybe you think you're protecting yourself from judgment, from rejection, from the look in someone's eyes that says you're too much, or not enough, or somehow wrong. You imagine what would happen if this hidden thing was seen and the mind fills with images of loss, of people turning away, of being left alone with the very thing you've been trying to keep contained. So you keep it hidden. And in keeping it hidden, you tell yourself you're being safe. But notice what happens in that safety. Notice how the protection itself becomes a kind of prison. How you can't fully relax, because relaxing might mean letting something slip. How you can't fully connect, because connection requires letting someone see you, and you've decided that certain parts of you cannot be seen. You're protecting an image, a version of yourself that feels acceptable, manageable, lovable. And to keep that image intact, you sacrifice the parts that don't fit. You exile them. You keep them in the dark, and you stand guard at the door. And all the while, something is being lost. Not in some distant future, not if you get found out, but right now. In every moment, you choose hiding over being. You're losing the possibility of being known, not just by others, but by yourself. Because when you hide something long enough, you start to forget it's there. It becomes background noise, a dull ache you've learned to live with. And the aliveness that comes from being whole, from letting all of yourself exist in the same room, fades into something quieter, something smaller. You're losing the relationships that could hold all of you, the ones that don't require you to perform or edit or protect. Because when you only show the acceptable parts, you only receive love for the acceptable parts. And somewhere inside, you know that's not the same as being loved. You're losing time. Moments that could have been spent in presence, in connection, in the simple relief of not having to hide. Instead, they're spent in maintenance, in vigilance, in the exhausting work of keeping yourself contained. The Buddha said, "Three things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth." And yet you keep trying. Not because you're foolish, not because you're weak, but because the fear feels so real, the risk feels so great, and the hidden thing feels too tender, too raw, too much to expose to a world that already asks so much of you. But what if the hiding is the wound? What if the thing you're protecting isn't actually fragile? What if it's the protection itself that makes you fragile? The constant effort to keep something down, to keep something out of sight, to keep yourself divided into the parts that are allowed and the parts that are not. You don't have to answer this now. You don't have to do anything with it. Just notice. Notice what it feels like in your body when you think about this hidden thing. Notice where you tighten, where you hold your breath, where you brace yourself against being seen, and notice what it costs you, not in theory, not in some imagined future, but right now, today, in the life you're actually living. What does it feel like to carry this? What does it feel like to always be partially here, partially guarding the door to somewhere else? You might find you don't know yet. You might find the question itself feels too big, too close. And that's okay. But the question remains. What are you protecting? And what are you losing in the protection? Sit with that. Not to solve it, not to fix it, just to see it. Because seeing is where everything begins. You feel it coming, don't you? That quiet weight settling in your chest, that slow heaviness behind your eyes. And before it even fully arrives, you're already looking away. Already reaching for your phone, for distraction, for anything that might keep sadness at a distance. As if it's not supposed to be here, as if it's an enemy at the door. But notice what happens in that turning away. Notice the tightness that comes with it. The moment sadness begins to surface, something in you recoils. Something says no, not this, not now. And in that refusal, in that quiet panic, you create a second layer of suffering. The sadness itself, and then the suffering of resisting it. You turn away because somewhere you learned that sadness is dangerous, that it will swallow you whole if you let it in, that it means something is wrong with you, or your life, or the way you've been living. So you push it down. You keep moving. You fill the space with noise, with tasks, with anything that keeps you from feeling what's actually here. But the sadness doesn't leave, does it? It just waits. It lingers at the edge of things. It shows up in your tiredness, in the way you can't quite settle, in the heaviness you carry through your days without naming it. And the turning away becomes a habit, a reflex so quick you barely notice you're doing it. The moment sadness arrives, you're already gone, already elsewhere, already building walls between you and what you feel. But what if sadness isn't an intruder? What if it's just weather passing through? What if it's no more personal than rain, no more permanent than clouds? You treat it like it will last forever, like if you let it in, it will define you, consume you, prove something terrible about who you are. So you guard against it. You turn away the moment it knocks. You pretend you didn't hear it. But sadness doesn't ask for your permission. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. It simply arises when conditions are present. A memory, a loss, a disappointment, the gap between what you wanted and what is. And it moves through, or it would if you let it. The Buddha said, you can search throughout the entire universe for someone who is more deserving of your love and affection than you are yourself, and that person is not to be found anywhere. And yet you treat your own sadness like it's unworthy of being felt, like it's something shameful, something to hide even from yourself. Notice how much energy it takes to keep turning away. How exhausting it is to constantly monitor your inner landscape, always ready to shut the door the moment something uncomfortable appears. You're spending your life guarding against your own experience, against what's already here. And in that guarding, you miss something. You miss the fact that sadness is not solid, is not one thing. When you actually stop and feel it, without the story, without the resistance, it shifts, it moves. It's made of sensations that rise and fall. Tightness in the throat, heaviness in the chest, heat behind the eyes. None of it stays the same for more than a moment. But you don't know this, because you never stay long enough to see it. You turn away before the sadness can show you its impermanence, before it can reveal that it's just visiting, not moving in. You've been treating sadness like a verdict, like proof of failure, but it's just an experience. One of many that move through this body, this mind, this life. It doesn't mean anything about you. It doesn't define you. It's just here, for now, because conditions brought it. And when you turn away, you're not protecting yourself. You're fragmenting yourself, creating an inner division between what you allow and what you exile, between the feelings you deem acceptable and the ones you push into the shadows. But all of it is here. All of it is part of this moment's truth. The sadness doesn't become less real because you refuse to look at it. It just becomes hidden, unacknowledged, carried in ways you don't even recognize. So what if you didn't turn away? Not as a practice, not as something to achieve, but simply as a moment of honesty. What if, just once, you let sadness be here without making it mean something? Without needing to fix it, understand it, or push it away? What if you let it be as ordinary as breathing? As natural as the sky changing color at dusk? The turning away is understandable. You learned it for good reasons. But you can also see it now. See how it creates its own suffering, how it keeps you at war with your own experience. And in the seeing, something softens. Not the sadness itself, but your relationship to it. The resistance begins to loosen. Not because you tried to let go, but because you finally stopped pretending it wasn't there. The sadness is here. It was always here. And you are still here too, even with it present. You've been carrying something, haven't you? Something you don't quite look at directly. It sits at the edge of your awareness, and when it moves closer, you turn your attention somewhere else. You check your phone, you start another task, you tell yourself it's nothing, or that it will pass, or that you're just being dramatic. But underneath that turning away, there's a question you haven't let yourself ask. Are you ignoring this because you believe it will disappear? Or are you ignoring it because you're terrified it won't? There's a difference, a vast difference. And somewhere in your body, you already know which one it is. When you ignore something because you think it will disappear, there's a kind of lightness to it, a casual dismissal. But that's not what this feels like, is it? This feels heavier. This feels like effort, like holding something underwater, like pretending not to see what's right in front of you. You're not ignoring it because it's small. You're ignoring it because it's enormous. Because if you let yourself really look at it, really feel it, it might not go anywhere. It might stay. It might be permanent. And that permanence is what terrifies you. So you keep moving. You keep busy. You keep your gaze slightly to the left of the truth. And in that constant motion, in that careful avoidance, you create a particular kind of suffering. The suffering of someone who is always braced, always ready to look away, always carrying the weight of what they refuse to see. You tell yourself you're protecting yourself. You tell yourself that not looking is a form of self-care. But protection requires energy, constant energy. And you're tired, aren't you? Tired of the vigilance, tired of the performance, tired of pretending that what's there isn't there. The mind does this. It creates elaborate strategies to avoid pain. But in avoiding the pain, it creates a different pain, the pain of resistance, the pain of living at an angle to your own life, the pain of knowing something and pretending you don't. And here's what makes it unbearable. You're not even sure what you're afraid of anymore. Is it the thing itself? Or is it the fact that you might have to live with it, that it might not resolve, that it might not have an ending? We want things to be temporary. We want suffering to be temporary, yes. But we also want clarity to arrive and stay. We want the hard things to pass and the good things to remain. But that's not how any of this works. Everything that arises also passes. Everything that comes also goes. And the thing you're avoiding, the thing you won't look at, it's already changing. It's already different than it was yesterday, than it was an hour ago. But you can't see that because you won't look. The Buddha said, pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. You've made suffering out of avoidance, out of the story that this thing, whatever it is, will define you, will trap you, will never leave. And in believing that story, you've trapped yourself already. Not in the thing itself, but in your relationship to it, in your refusal to see it clearly. What if it does stay? What if it doesn't disappear? What if this feeling, this situation, this truth about yourself or your life is simply here? Not forever, because nothing is forever. But here, now, without an exit date, you can circle on a calendar. Can you bear that? Can you bear the not knowing? Can you bear the possibility that resolution might not come in the form you want, or in the time frame you've decided is acceptable? This is where you are, caught between the hope that ignoring something will make it vanish, and the fear that looking at it will make it permanent. But both of these are fantasies. Ignoring doesn't make things disappear, and looking doesn't make things permanent. Looking just lets you see what's already happening. Right now, in this moment, you're spending enormous energy on not seeing, on keeping your attention anywhere but here. And that energy, that constant effort, is its own kind of prison. You think you're free because you're not facing it, but you're not free. You're just occupied, endlessly occupied with the task of looking away. The thing you're avoiding is already part of your experience. It's already here. You're just refusing to acknowledge it. And in that refusal, you make it larger. You make it solid. You make it the thing that must not be looked at, which gives it a power it might not actually have. What if you stopped for a moment, not to fix it, not to solve it, not to make it go away, but just to see it, to let it be what it is, to stop pretending it's not there. You don't have to do anything with it. You don't have to make a decision. You don't have to know what comes next. You just have to stop running. The question sits there, still, unanswered. Are you ignoring this because it will disappear, or because you're terrified it won't? Maybe the answer doesn't matter as much as the asking. You're already moving. Before the conversation ends, you're thinking about the next thing. Before the email closes, you're opening another tab. Before the feeling settles, you're reaching for your phone, for a task, for anything that pulls you forward into what's next. And somewhere underneath all that motion, something just happened. Something you didn't quite let yourself feel. Maybe it was a moment of disappointment. Maybe someone said something that stung a little. Maybe you felt small, or wrong, or uncertain. Maybe it was nothing traumatic at all, just a flicker of discomfort, a tightness in your chest, a thought that made you feel less than okay. And instead of staying there, even for a breath, you moved. You moved towards something urgent, something that feels like it matters more. A deadline, a plan, a distraction, a version of yourself that's better, busier, more in control. You moved because staying still felt impossible. Because staying still meant feeling what you don't want to feel. This is what we do. We run toward the next thing as if it will save us from the last thing. As if forward motion is the same as healing. As if being productive, being busy, being anywhere but here will somehow erase what we just experienced. But it doesn't erase it, it just pushes it down. And the feeling doesn't go away, it waits. It waits in your body, in the tension you carry, in the restlessness that won't let you settle. It waits in the way you can't quite relax, even when there's nothing left to do. You tell yourself the next thing is urgent. You tell yourself it matters. And maybe it does. But ask yourself what would happen if you stopped. What would happen if, just for a moment, you didn't move forward? what would you have to feel? That's the question you're running from. Because stopping means meeting what's here. It means sitting with the disappointment. It means feeling the sting of that comment. It means noticing the fear that you're not enough, or the sadness that something didn't go the way you hoped. It means being with the discomfort of not knowing what comes next. And that feels unbearable. So you make the next thing urgent. You convince yourself it can't wait. You fill the space before the space can fill you. But here's what's true. The urgency is manufactured. The next thing will still be there in 5 minutes. The task will wait. The plan will hold. What won't wait is this moment. What won't hold is the feeling you're refusing to meet. And every time you run, you teach yourself that what you feel is too much, that you can't handle it, that you need to escape. You teach yourself that being here, as you are, with what is not safe. So you keep running. And the urgency grows. And the gap between what you feel and what you allow yourself to feel gets wider. The Zen teacher Shunryu Suzuki said, "The most important thing is to find out what is the most important thing. What if the most important thing isn't the next thing? What if the most important thing is what you just felt and didn't let yourself stay with? You don't need to fix it, you don't need to understand it, you don't need to make it better or make it go away. You just need to stop running long enough to let it be here. Because it's already here. It's been here the whole time. The disappointment, the sting, the fear, the sadness. It's all here, whether you acknowledge it or not. Running doesn't make it disappear. It just makes you tired. And maybe that's what you're feeling now. Not just the urgency, but the exhaustion of always moving. The weariness of never arriving. The quiet ache of never letting yourself land. What if you stopped? Not forever, not dramatically, just for a breath. Just long enough to notice what's here. What would you feel? What would happen if you let yourself feel it? Nothing urgent would collapse. Nothing essential would fall apart. The world would keep turning. The next thing would still be there. But you might finally meet yourself. You might finally stop running from the one thing that's been chasing you all along. The simple, uncomfortable truth of what it feels like to be you right now, in this moment. And maybe that's not as unbearable as you think. Maybe it's just a feeling, passing through, asking to be seen, not fixed, not solved, just seen. And maybe that's enough. You tell yourself you've moved on. You say it out loud sometimes. You believe it when you say it. But then your chest tightens when you see something that reminds you. Your stomach drops when a certain song plays. Your shoulders carry a heaviness that wasn't there before, and you can't quite remember when it arrived, only that it's here now, solid and familiar. The mind says one thing, the body says something else. And you're caught between them, trying to make the story match the feeling, or the feeling match the story. Why do you need to believe you've moved on? What is it about staying here in this unfinished place that feels so unbearable? Maybe it's because moving on sounds like progress. It sounds like you're doing it right, like you're strong, capable, healed. And staying here, still feeling the weight, sounds like failure, like you're stuck, like something is wrong with you. So you tell yourself the story, you rehearse it, you've moved on, you're over it, you've let go. The words feel good when you say them. They create a version of you that feels more acceptable, more together, more free. But the body doesn't lie. It remembers what the mind wants to forget. It holds what you haven't been willing to feel. And no amount of saying you've moved on will convince your nervous system that the danger has passed, or that the loss doesn't still live somewhere in your bones. You carry the weight because you haven't let yourself carry it. You've been trying to put it down by pretending it isn't there. And pretending takes effort. Constant effort. The effort of maintaining the story. The effort of keeping up the appearance. The effort of not feeling what's still here to be felt. The weight isn't the problem. The weight is just what's left. What you're doing is creating a second layer of suffering by insisting the weight shouldn't be there, by needing to have moved on, by measuring yourself against some invisible timeline of healing that says you should be further along by now. But who decided that? Who said this is how long grief lasts, or how long heartbreak should take, or when the body should stop remembering what happened? You did. The mind did. Because the mind wants certainty. It wants to know that this will end. It wants to control the process, to manage the pain, to arrive at a place where everything feels resolved and you can finally relax. But the body doesn't work on the mind's schedule. The body moves at its own pace. It releases when it's ready. It softens when it feels safe. And all your insisting that you've moved on only tells the body that what it's feeling isn't welcome here. So the weight stays. Not because you're doing something wrong, not because you're broken or stuck or failing at healing, but because the body is still processing, still integrating, still making sense of what happened in its own quiet, wordless way. Thich Nhat Hanh said, "The present moment is the only moment available to us, and it is the door to all moments." What if this moment, with all its weight, is enough? What if you don't need to have moved on? What if the story you're telling yourself about where you should be is the only thing standing between you and what's actually here? You're not carrying the weight because you failed to let go. You're carrying it because something real happened. Something that mattered. Something that changed you. And the body is honoring that. The body is being honest about what was lost, what was felt, what still reverberates. The mind wants to move on, because the mind is afraid of staying. Afraid that if you don't declare yourself healed, you'll be stuck here forever. Afraid that the weight will never lift. Afraid that this feeling is who you are now. But feelings aren't permanent. The weight you feel today isn't the same weight you felt last month. It shifts, it changes. Sometimes it's heavy, sometimes it's barely there, sometimes it returns when you thought it was gone. Not because you're going backward, but because healing isn't linear, because the body doesn't move in straight lines. What if you didn't need to believe you've moved on? What if you could just be here with the weight, without making it mean something about you, without turning it into evidence of your failure or your weakness or your inability to let go? The weight is just the weight. It's not who you are. It's not permanent. It's not wrong. It's just what's here right now. And maybe that's enough. Maybe you don't need to have moved on. Maybe you just need to stop pretending you have.